Exercise 4. White just gave you a check and it's your turn. Now the solution. Since you're in check, you have obviously to move your king. You could also think about moving the rook in between, and in case both moves are not satisfying, you could actually think about it. But to begin with, you should start with the king, obviously. Now there are only two options, so you need to check them both. And I was hoping for you to spot the fork on king to c8, that white can actually win the exchange. And moreover, the trap of the exercise was for you to stop the calculation here and just saying that this is bad for black because I don't want to lose an exchange, and instead I play king to a8 because that, well, does not lose the exchange. But the move king to a8 is even worse because it loses you the game, simply because if you would check the active moves, for example the move knight to b6, then you will get mated in the next move, since if you take it with the pawn, there is the mate on a1, and otherwise there is the mate on c8. And this is a mistake that many chess players do, because the mistake in this part is that you don't consider the alternatives. So yes, after queen c8 you have a bad sequence ahead of you, but it doesn't mean that the move king to a8 is automatically better. And the solution is indeed king to c8, and after the check you just move the king, for example, to d7. You will obviously lose the exchange and also the pawns, but the position is still objectively drawn because white doesn't have any passers to promote, but even if he would have had them, it's better than getting a mate. Next position, it's black to move. Now the solution. Again, in a blitz game, I would assume that many of you would consider playing, for example, just queen to f3 and rook e3, just, well, with a double attack on the pawns and, well, winning a pawn. This is certainly true, so white cannot guard both pawns at the same time, so you will get an endgame being a pawn up. The issue is that in this position white is playing a rook game with a pawn down, but many rook games are pretty easily drawn even with a pawn less. For example, this position, all he needs to do is to exchange c4 and d6, and it will be a theoretical draw. I will explain it after the playlist 20 in much detail. So let's start from the beginning. This is a move that's certainly decent, positionally speaking, but this is not the way how we calculate variance. Instead, we should start with checks, and there's just one check, and this is rook to e1. After rook e1 check, white answers with king to h2, since this is the only reasonable move. We won't even start calculating queen to f1 because it simply loses. So after king to h2, there is again the question, is there any continuation that we should check and decide whether it is worth more than the endgame with a pawn up? And there are only 3 checks on the second move. It's rook h1 check, queen to f4 check, both are losing, but also there is queen to e5 check, so on the second move. Now we still calculate further, so white has to react, and he has 2 options that we need to check. It's the move g3 and queen to g3. If white moves g3, then we might already see that the king is a bit in danger because of the 2 lines that we can attack on him from the side. And the other move is queen to g3. In the ideal case, you would even try to calculate it further, but if you just spot that after g3 you might have some good attacking chances, then at least it's worthy of, well, just try it out. Then you have some kind of a feeling for the attack. But you should also check, obviously, the move queen to g3. And now, if you have stopped the calculation on this position and you would say, well, that's it, I tried all what I could do in this position and I'm done. Well, that's not the right way of calculating, but instead you need to check the checks even in this position. And as I have shown you, there are two checks, both of them you need to, well, look for. If you just take on g3, then at least you can still play rook to e3 and getting almost the same rook endgame, being a pawn up. So at least that's something. But there's also the second check, which obviously loses the rook on, well, the first side. But at the same time, if you look further, you will just win the queen. And this is the solution. You give the check, king takes, and you win the queen. This is one part of the solution, and the second part is if white plays g3 instead, then also you are trying just to get the file made. There's still the option from white to move the queen in between, but that loses after rook e2 as well. So after all, the result is, if you start with the checks and you see them through till the end, then you will see that you just win the game. All you need to do is to, well, follow the routine and don't stop just because you don't believe in the success, but you have to check it till the end. Final position, it's white to move. And again, the solution here is just to follow blindly the routine until the end to see whether there is something. And in this position, actually, there, well, is a win. So you start with the checks and you have only two checks. One of them is losing the queen straight away, and the second one is queen to e8. So let's start with queen e8, king to g7. Now, are there any checks on the second move? Well, knight to e6 is losing the knight. Also, all the queen checks are losing the queen. And the only check on the second move that is, well, interesting to check is the move knight to f5. Now again, black is in check, so he has to move his king to g6. And then again, you ask yourself, are there any possibilities to check? And if you would have stopped in this position and, well, explain yourself that there is no continuation left, then you would probably abandon the variation and not find the solution. But if you follow through with the routine, then you will need to check for the checks again. And there are three checks in the final position that are worthy of some kind of calculation. Certainly queen to h takes f7 is also a check, but it's pretty easy dismissible. So after check, king g6, you need to look through all three of these, and maybe or probably you will find the right solution. That is starting with check, second check, and then queen to g8. Yes, it does lose the knight, but you will have a continuation that is worthy of, well, considering it. It's the move queen to g4 check. So pawn to g4, just the king runs away and that's it. But instead queen to g4 is a check, and you still need to continue the sequence. Here queen to e4 would almost be mate, but the king can still get to d6, so this is not the required solution. But there is also the second check, which, wins the queen on c7. This whole sequence is the solution for the exercise, and this is not something that you would be easily spotting in your own games. And the only reason to find the move in your own games is if you learn to go through the sequences really, really fast, and therefore it won't take up your time or any energy just to check it briefly, and suddenly you may spot such 5 move sequences quite easily.